Christmas, Nagambie, and welcome to another episode of our Advent calendar. Today, we are going to visit the beautiful Anglican Church, where Di Grant will be reading a Christmas story and Peter Derbyshire will be explaining the reason or the history behind the Advent calendar. Today is also the 4th of Advent, so we are lighting our 4th candle. Enjoy.
Welcome to St. John's, Nagambie, for our Advent message. I'd like to read a very small story about a little Christmas donkey that every year at my church in Avenel we read for our Mothers Union, our spiritual group. So here goes. Here's our Donkey Remembers. It was a cold, snowy day in Bethlehem. Quiet, hushed, still. I heard the crunch of hoofs on the pebble path outside the cave, and I gave a welcoming bray. Our master from the inn, on top of the stable, was talking quietly. By the light of his smouldering torch, I saw 2 people enter the stable, the man leading his ass. The master went off. The 2 stayed, looking around as if they were looking at the best house in the village. The man, who was named Joseph, piled up straw. A couple of mice scampered off, and Joseph doubled his shawl over the pile and smoothed it out. The woman, she was little more than a girl, eased herself into the folds gratefully. She was heavy with child. The man gazed around. He moved his hand slowly along the rough wood of our feed box, deep in thought and sad, it seemed to me. Suddenly, with a gasp of delight, he began tossing over the hay. Mary, beloved, we have a crib for the babe. The manger will serve the little one well. The cave grew quieter and quieter. My friend Ox breathed slowly and deeply. Then a strange, new, small sound bored into my slumbers. It took me a while to wake fully and take in the scene. The place was pleasantly, drowsily warm. Coals glowed in a red shard of pottery. A couple of older women were fussing around the girl, and the man's eyes shining was holding up a tiny babe. The little thing seemed to glisten in his hands. The smell of oil mingled with the various smells of a well-used stable. Fascinated, I watched as the young mother and her helpers bundled up the little one, arms straight by his side, and tied him up like a parcel. There were smiles all around as Mary cradled the child in her arms, and I could have looked at the 2 of them forever. I'm so glad there was no room for them at the inn. That was by Eli the donkey from Bethlehem. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to St. John's, Nagambie. We're into the season of Advent. The season's been known and used, goes back in history, something like 1600 years. It's a time that leads before Christmas. And of course, it was always a time when children especially became excited, waiting for the big day to come. Somewhere around about the 19th century, a German man decided that there had to be something better than what was being done. In those days, people wrote on the wall or on a sideboard, marking off the 25 days before Christmas. And each day, one day would be crossed out or rubbed out or removed. Gertrude Lang published the first of the Advent calendars in around about 1885. It was published in the newspaper and it was more or less as a gift to the people who read them. Advent calendars became popular. Up until the start of the Second World War, they were growing in usage immensely. During the war, of course, the shortage of cardboard, there was no way that they could be used or they could continue to be used, so they fell into disrepute. After the war, Dwight D. Eisenhower was one of the leaders in getting the Advent calendar back on the scene when he was seen, or photographed, opening the calendar with one of his grandchildren. Nowadays the calendar is there and it's popular, becoming more and more popular, especially in the States and even in Australia, and it's become more and more probably commercialised, and no more do we look so much towards Christmas. Thanks.